Two acclaimed Japanese horror tales might be fooling you. Okay, fine. We already know the Uzumaki anime is tragic. But what about its manga? Is it actually good? And the Summer Hikaru Died. Is there anything good there besides the bromance? The truth is, one of them is absolute cinema and the other a huge disappointment. But do you know why? I read and watched both, and with that I'll show you till the end of this video why one is the superior horror story, while the other has a little accident in its road to glory. So leave a like and subscribe to support this special video, because today you'll see how a good horror anime is made, and I'm also gonna open your eyes to these Japanese horror giants. Seibaa! To be fair, I'm gonna compare the Summer Hikaru Died anime with both the manga and the Uzumaki anime, focusing on story and intent, not production. And from what I've read of the early chapters of the Summer Hikaru Died, there isn't much difference from the anime, so I'll use the adaptation as my base. That said, let's start with their premises. The Summer Hikaru got hollowed, the Summer Hikaru Died, aka Hikanatsu, might look like standard horror at first, but it's really about the very special bond between two friends while they deal with a tiny problem. One of them is an imposter, a creature that took over the boy's body and claims it just wants to live a chill human life. But is it really a coincidence that all this paranormal activity is descending on their village? Meanwhile, in a small town, Uzumaki, not the Naruto one, shows bizarre events tied to spirals that contaminate the region and the lives of a couple living around there, dragging everyone toward the center of its madness like water down a toilet. So the first can catch you off guard by focusing on the relationship between characters at the epicenter of a supernatural mess, while the second always spotlights the weirdness itself from the get-go, which draws attention to an important point of comparison between the two, their characters, who interestingly enough are led by duos in both stories. But in Junji Ito's work, protagonists Kiri and Shuichi function more as the audience's eyes, mere witnesses and victims of the insanity around them. The spiral's curse could clap their butt cheeks and they'd still be powerless.
Yes, baby.
On the other hand, Yoshiki and especially Hikaru have even more sway over the supernatural than the Winchester brothers, but one acts from his reserved personality and repressed love, while the other is as curious and innocent as Curious George, while also having an enigmatic, eerie vibe thanks to his true identity. It's also worth noting that Uzumaki's supporting characters are there, of course, to suffer alongside the leads, and also to let the spirals manifest in different ways, whether in a tiny little scar on someone's forehead or a furnace that seems cursed. Meanwhile, in Hikanatsu, some are directly subjected to the horror, while others bring different perspectives to the supernatural. So it's clear the spiral story uses its characters as instruments to showcase the bizarre events, while the bromance spotlights them within a disturbing context. Which brings us to the key point of comparison between the two, how each one approaches its horror. One of the key factors for a good story in this genre is the atmosphere, that mood permeating the story to immerse you in the narrative and leave you vulnerable to the horror. Both stories nail this at first, with Uzumaki sprinkling small oddities through the world and showing elements that will become crucial later in the story, while the Summer Hikaru Died shoves the main conflict right in your face, then lets it stay in the back of your mind as it shows more of the characters and the impact of the supernatural. However, Hikanatsu sustains that atmosphere longer, with a kind of horror that aims to disturb rather than scare. On the other hand, Uzumaki tries to shock with its visuals and the terrifying creativity behind them. This is done perfectly in the manga, with its detailed imagery, and also in the anime, with the shock of such fantastic animation. Not quite as fantastic as you leaving a like on this video, so go ahead, subscribe, ring the bell, and consider hyping the video too. After all, Uzumaki keeps escalating its events and plunges into a spiral of madness, which can yield both great and not so great results. So from here on out, we're gonna break down how these stories work with all these elements, and show why one is ultimately superior to the other.
I'm gay!
Starting with the Summer Hikaru Died, it's hard to imagine you've made it this far without knowing that the anime is pretty gay. For some, that might make the work even more terrifying, but to me, this is a crucial part of the story, because it adds layers to the relationship between the protagonists and their interactions with a conservative village. Even better, because it seems to be handled naturally, without tropey fanservice just to give the Fujoshi a nosebleed. By contrast, the relationship of Uzumaki's couple isn't explored head-on. It mostly serves as a support so each character has someone to lean on amid the chaos, or as a counterpoint to the situations they witness, like the girl who tries to cuck her friend, another couple who attempts to escape town without much success, or the weirdos who get obsessed with the main girl, which includes a tornado. This shows that the true protagonist isn't necessarily Kirie and Shuichi, but the town they're in, whereas Yoshiki and Hikaru are influenced by the environment and the supporting cast around them, but ultimately the story is about them, and that directly impacts how the horror develops in the stories, since what begins as subtle changes in Uzumaki's town snowballs into chaos as episodes and chapters go by, with the author burning through every idea he has to turn spirals into horror. The problem is that some aren't executed all that well, so we end up with moments of unintentional comedy. For example, hair forming spirals that suffocate or hypnotize others. Sure, that can be disturbing, but when another girl gets jealous and we wind up with a hair battle. To top it off, we even have people practically gaining the powers of the red tornado near the end. Plus, my favorite bit, one that's already funny in the manga, but downright hilarious in the anime.
Coil mash.
It was at this moment he knew he fucked up.
On the other hand, Hikanatsu has intentional comedic beats that either give context to the characters' lives or lure you into a false sense of security. Since the story's unsettling atmosphere is quieter, you always feel like something bad could happen, you just don't know when. Plus, that mood remains because of the characters' choices, since the matter at hand isn't just the beings visiting the village and the terror they cause, but the possibility that things will keep getting worse, and that it will all be thanks to the complicity that let a monster live among humans. All of this blends with themes like acceptance, grief, and love, making you question who the real monster is, or even what a monster is. From there, Hikanatsu reveals itself as more than a horror story, balancing the psychological exploration of its characters with an investigation into why everything is happening, because it's all connected, and the answers are there to be found. Meanwhile, in Uzumaki, you get curious to know what's the next crazy spiral-related horror they'll throw at you, rather than why it all happens. That gives us shocking moments, and others that come off as funny or thematically disconnected, but also a brief look at human nature in times of crisis. People who reach out to help, those who cling to their loved ones, and those who toss their humanity aside for survival. Subjects that would fit perfectly in a top-tier post-apocalyptic story, like WALL-E. Or The Walking Dead, your call. So while Hikanatsu uses horror as one of the core tools to explore its themes, Uzumaki captivates with its creativity in using spirals and all the atmospheric build-up that leads us to grotesque situations and images, something that works well most of the time, but doesn't go much further than that. It's like Junji Ito looked at a spiral one day and thought, I'm gonna mess with people's heads. Or rather, and then built a simple story so he could play with the concept. Meanwhile, Hikanatsu's author, Mokumokuren, seems to have spent a decent amount of time thinking through the concepts of their world, and then tied them to the feelings they wanted to convey. That's why we get scenes packed with meaning, like the beach sequence. No spoilers. Anime as a whole has some great beach moments, but Hikanatsu's is among the best I've ever seen. This shit's on Madagascar level. Okay, that last part is a joke. Nobody in Hikanatsu is that hungry to eat their buddies.
You sure about that?
So to be clear, a horror story has lots of characteristic elements like the fantastic or jump scares, but the most important thing should be its build-up, the atmosphere and tension that make you uncomfortable. And when we talk about good horror anime, I feel like that discomfort is even more crucial, since being genuinely scared by 2D animation is tough, given the obvious gap between drawing and reality. With all that in mind, Uzumaki is an experiment within the horror genre. Its creativity lands more hits than misses, but is still limited by a single concept, and ends up not exploring much beyond that. In contrast, the Summer Hikaru Died keeps you on edge with its horror and tackles several different themes very well. It's not just the bromance. That's why it's the superior horror story and the absolute cinema that proves it's possible to make a high quality anime in this genre. As for the Uzumaki anime, its first episode also proves that point, adapting the best aspects of the original work very well. But beyond that, it's the dud we already know, while its manga is quite good, though not without issues, which is why it's the disappointment in today's video. But now I want to hear from you. Which anime should appear next in this series? And would you rather face the Spiral's curse or Hikanatsu's supernatural? By the way, I read the Uzumaki manga after watching the anime, and to me, the adaptation is better than the original in some aspects. Would you like a video comparing the two? If so, comment Uzumaki comparison down below. Oh, and one more thing.
Boo!